Good afternoon, dear gentle viewers. You're welcome this special edition of the Citizen Chat Show here at Civic Space TV. We meet here with heavy hearts on the backdrop of a tragic event that happened on the night of June 16th in Kasese, where we are told a group of ADF rebels attacked and killed 42 people in Kasese, including 37 students of Rubihila Secondary School. This has saddened the nation, and indeed we join together in mourning and we send our condolences to the affected families and the entire community of Kasese. This has not only saddened the nation, but has also raised critical security-related issues. Are Ugandans safe? Can we still feel that the citizens of Uganda are protected? To discuss these questions, I have eminent citizens, very able gentlemen. You're most welcome to the show. We have retired Major Awich Pollar, who is the Director of External Services at the National Resistance Movement. You're most welcome to the show.
Thank you, and thank you to our viewers.
And next is Mr. Otieno Joseph, who is a UPC ideologue and a media personality. You're most welcome.
It's a pleasure to be here, but as you say, obviously discussing very sad situations after another very sad situation in Somalia. And as the citizens, I think all of us are concerned. So it's a condolences to the entirety of the families involved, but condolences really to our country, where we continue to lose lives senselessly.
Sure. Comrade Dawichi, national security is one of the core services of any government. At least we are told in the foundation of any nation, the very fundamental promise of government to the people is to secure their lives, their property, and the promises that are legally made. We, I think, for the last 3-4 months have been witnessing violent actions involving guns. You know, there is a lot of gun violence. You know, the murder of a minister, at that time we had violent murder of a businessman, and then later on we have attack of our UPDF base in Somalia, where we lost about 54 UPDF soldiers. And now, just on the night of last Friday, we lost about 42 people, including 37 students. Is this an indication that the NRM government can no longer guarantee security to the Ugandans?
No, it is not. It doesn't mean that. NRM government has the capacity to guarantee security. First, I send my condolence to the family, to the country, and to President Museveni for this death that occurred. I had already done that before because the massacre took place on Friday, and on Saturday I appeared on Urban TV. I already sent my condolence, but I'm sending it again. We shouldn't be losing even a single life of a Ugandan, regarding of political affiliation, religious or otherwise. You talk of the national security. We may want to make our viewers understand that to show the importance of national security as a commitment or a core duty of the state is that, what does the Constitution say? The Constitution provides in Article 219 a provision called the National Security Council. The National Security Council is provided for under the Constitution to provide the legal order, the body that is supreme to manage the security of this country. And under the National Security Council, under Article 219, like any other article of the Constitution, it needs to be operationalized by an act of Parliament. So Parliament operationalized this by passing a law called the National Security Council Act. So the act provides for membership to this body, which is mandated to oversee the holistic security of the country. I may inform you that at one time, or I am actually appointed on that body. It's the highest body in the land. And so high that under the act,
that is the National Security Council.
Yes, National Security Council. Under the act, the head of security organizations are members, but they are what you call, what is the term in law? They are members there, but the substantive members, which I was appointed to, is higher than, say, the CDF. Yes. So I'm looking for the term, to how they are termed as members. They are called...
Ad hoc members?
No. What is the other name? The members who don't vote are called what?
They are called... Yes.
What's
that?
Is it ex-officio? Are they ex-officio?
Ex-officials, yeah.
So the members there too are ex-officio, I think, the term used there in the law, in the act. I need to check the act. But these bodies are there. Now, this law or this provision of the Constitution, to show that the country is concerned about that, that's why it has to appear under the supreme law of the land. And therefore, this law provides for who are these bodies who are mandated to see that the security of Ugandans are okay. They are there. And other countries have it. The Americans have the National Security Council. UK has, other countries have it, but we also have it. Now, it provides therefore for organs. The organs of the states are there provided. The army, the police, the security, the intelligence, and all that. And funding there too is put by Parliament every year to fund these organizations.
Security has one of the highest
funding.
3.5
so
trillion.
Therefore, this to show that institutionally, Uganda is well prepared, right from the constitution to the enabling laws, to the funding of the organizations that do the operational work. But above this is that the political will, the commitment.
Yes.
I can assure you that one thing that our commander-in-chief has mastered is security aspect. In fact, you never dare go to that angle. You can't play around with elections and voting and cheating and all this, but security, he doesn't joke about it. Therefore, whichever incidents that has happened of late will be handled. And that is not to say the incidences show inability, both in terms of capacity or in terms of will of NRM to guarantee security. The will is there, the capacity is there, both technical knowing and even instruments there too. So for those who have taken advantage of these lapses, I think they would better restrain themselves.
So
because
Major Awich, when you say the capacity is there, the will is there, but then throughout the year you have a spate of these violent, unfoldings that are really, really absurd, then what do you call that?
You see, even if you have the capacity, for example, take technologically advanced countries. Ideally, as I said, the state has the mandate to protect lives and property. And that is why the security is all about. Ideally, the state should even protect you from harming yourself. For example, there's what is called a suicide pact. Suicide pact is where a group of people decide to kill themselves. The state should even intervene, should have the investigative capacity to even make sure that before you consider hanging yourself, the police comes and arrests you. So not only is the state supposed to protect other harms to you, but even you harming yourself. But you can see it's a broad work that even in high technology areas, there are lapses. So these lapses do not, even in Japan with the whole security, we still have suicide pact. A group of certain people decide to hide and kill themselves. Of course, some instances the situation is arrested. We have had this one of Kanungo was called what? The
Kibwetere group.
Kibwetere. Ideally, as a state, we should even have intervened to make sure that even those people where Kibwetere was persuading them to die, don't die. But you can see even in countries like Kenya, it still does happen. So, I'm saying, even when you have the will, like President Museveni has the will to protect, to give security, and that's where we have been getting votes. Remember, our capital, our asset to the voters is we provide security. And that is why in urban areas, among the elites, we have tended to lose among the elites. But among the population, where they know we are providing security, we have had our solid base. So, this solid base is not because of any other reason, but because of the reason that we are determined, we have the capacity of training, we have the capacity of the weapon, and we have the interest. That is the will. But all this, even if you have the will, it's like a porous borders. Something will come up. So you address it as and when it comes.
Shouldn't capacity be reflected in the peace and the security enjoyed across the country? Do
you know that right now, compared to many areas in the region, Congo, South Sudan, or wherever, we are an island of peace? Undoubtedly, we are peaceful. Even if you went and rank it, even if you Google of peaceful countries, I'm sure we rank high. But incidents happen. By the way, even if you, apart from the rebel attack itself, if you compare countries, gun death, including South Africa, Uganda still comes least. America is higher than us. South Africa is higher than us. And many countries. So I don't want the viewers...
So making a comparison.
Yes, I'm making a comparison. Because I am saying we should not take lapses as the overall matter of inability, both in terms of capacity to protect or even interest to protect. No, these lapses are just mere lapses, and it will be dealt with.
Mr. Tieno, how do you respond to Comrade Awich? You've heard him, he says that there's a capacity, there's the will, and that in fact that Uganda is an island of peace and security within the region.
You know, Comrade Awich is a soldier.
Yeah.
Comrade Awich is a lawyer.
Yeah.
But unfortunately, I think on this occasion, Comrade Awich is taken over slightly more by his very prominent position in NRA as a political propagandist from the NRA Secretariat. To the extent that Comrade Awich is seeking to contradict himself in the direct open.
Discuss the topic, don't discuss me.
No.
Leave me, discuss the topic.
You're my brother, and there is no circumstance there's no circumstance under which anything will divide me and you as brothers.
Okay.
I am actually building onto that. Comrade Awich, there is absolutely no evidence that Mr. Museveni has the will. There is absolutely no evidence that Mr. Museveni has got the capacity. And there is absolutely no evidence, and that's why I invoked this argument when he started talking the numbers game and talking of Uganda as an island of peace and stability. What has happened in this country merely in the last 3 months, as Harris has said, I missed it in Kenya, a comparable nation state. I missed it in Tanzania, a comparable original East African nation states. I missed it from Rwanda, a nation that we created, that NRA created, post Habyarimana, whose president is, thanks to UPC, a creation and a born of Uganda, and thanks to NRA, a creation with the capacity that he has. I know he's your terror school friend, and you've got a soft spot for him.
Yeah.
No.
It is true, you went to the great school.
You guys, I think maybe a future UPC government, when we have sorted out all questions of security, all future leaders and tending leaders should go
UPC school.
Should go to, yes, it is, but they should, all of them should be going to Mwiri, because there you have a little bit of much more objective composure.
Okay.
You know, so quite seriously, so what's happened in the last 3 months? The killing of a minister, huge security lapse that people play excuses. The underlying issues, as you rightly say, Comrade Rich, and that's why I invoked your legal power, and is a thorough lawyer, you know. If the state has got the capacity to preempt, and quite rightly, to preempt thoughts, you know, the state should have seen the pending danger, the things that led to a soldier killing a minister. The state should have been able to see what happened, leading to the investigative element, arms of it, leading to the killing of that artist. But much more so, going straight into it, Kasese is a resignation matter. Kasese, Mr. Museveni ought to have, the government ought to have resigned in normal democracies. And at least if Mr. Museveni doesn't resign, and they know for him is a permanent life president, surely his Minister for Defense should be resigning. You know, in the sense that these guys walk across a porous border. These guys are hardly 2 kilometers away from a military post. These guys are hardly 2 kilometers away from a major police station, and 1.5 kilometers thereabout of a police post. These guys walk into our country, you know, we don't know who they are, walk into our country, commit these massacres over a 2-hour period. It takes 2 hours for the security forces to respond. This against a background in which we are paying hugely in the name of presidential and security in national defense. This against the backdrop of building roads, while for me I'm walking on like a cattle kraal in a Gongera for home. You know, we are building roads in the name of securing security in Congo. I'm doing the preemptive element of it. There is no justification. But most importantly, that just the previous week, there has been the biggest massacre of Ugandans outside our borders. You know, that atrocious thing again in Somalia, that would possibly have required a government to resign, required an explanation from Mr. Museveni, and required a Mr. Museveni to have presented himself in a manner better than the manner in which he did, where he effectively was blaming these soldiers that they were panicked, you know, and when we know that at the end of it, I wonder who would have done what, and then he comes and talks about how all these things happen as a result of corruption, and the corruption by who? When he's the commander-in-chief. So who takes responsibility? Is it the case that we take our boys and girls to Somalia, you know, without our mandate, you know? They spend all their time down there, and Kumbe, the people who are recruiting and taking them there and determining all whatever is happening in Somalia, you, the commander-in-chief, who is a person who is in power by virtue of military, you have no clue, you know? So I can go on and on and on. But as Comrade Awich now rightly suggests.
But before you go to Comrade Awich.
No, yeah.
And I heard the president.
But I'll put this in context. National security is the basic, most primary responsibility of any government, any state.
Yes.
Providing the protection of the lives and properties of the citizens of this country. Within the last 3 months, NRA has failed and failed spectacularly. As I said, if there was a will, we would have seen in the responses starting from that of the minister, including where there needs to be urgent discussion about the state of health of our people, maybe beginning to have conversations about the state of and welfare of our servicemen and women, resulting from the killing of that soldier. Is it because there was a mental health issue, or is it because about welfare, underlying issues, things to do with accommodation, things to do with their welfare? And I've just learned yesterday, I was having a meal with a friend yesterday, Thursday, and I was told that apparently many of these people in Museveni's other specialist forces, apparently these guys earn hardly 600,000 Uganda shillings. Many of them, nearly 100, tented around them. See how splash the big generals splash the big monies that they cannot explain, and some of these people can hardly afford to pay school fees for their children, the school fees that UPC used to take for all the young children of the People's Republic of Uganda.
Yeah, but I would like to push back a little bit, Mr. Otieno. You know, of course, the unfortunate event, was a rebel attack. The president...
Allegedly, because even that has not been explained properly. Yes.
Allegedly. Yeah. And the president has come out to attribute that to a lapse in intelligence. Says someone should have, could have slept on the job.
That shows no will there.
But to be fair, given our knowledge of the operations of terrorist operations.
Which Museveni knows as well.
Yeah.
Knows better anyway than all of us because he practiced the same.
Yeah. Given your knowledge of terrorists, what could have been done better in the circumstances to protect those innocent students?
Absolutely important point. I was saying maybe I was going zigzag. Comrade, which will agree. After the Somalia attack, the most common sense thing, you don't need to go to Chankwanzi military training. And Chankwanzi, I use Chankwanzi because Chankwanzi is really a fun place, we need to close it. But you don't need to have gone for a basic military training, to know that once Somalia happened, that you are alerting to the fact that these guys are serious, these guys are real enemies, these guys are aiming at us. You review the security in Somalia, you review the security domestically, in fact, you review the security in your missions. I'm giving you guys free advice, and you review security. And reviewing security does not mean whipping people, like whipping people who are very easy to whip, kind of stuff. But you genuinely internalize, say, what could happen, what could we do, and how do we make sure that we ensure possible defense against a possible attack, because these guys are coming. So basically, that's what I'm trying to say. Once Somalia happened, it was a wake-up call, because Somalia itself was a surprise to an extent to these guys, because these guys thought, well, time now was time for allowances, we are dealing with this Al-Shabaab. But what I did not say at the beginning, how many times did Museveni tell us that they'd sorted Al-Shabaab in Somalia? So now they just keep piecing us, whatever. How many times did Museveni tell us that so-called ADF have been defeated and finished in Congo? How many times? How many times did he tell us that they're building roads at the expense of the money for Nagongre Road, in Congo, in the name of this? So these are preemptive, commonsensical things that you expect to happen. So basically, the border needed to have been secured through intelligence-led operations. Number two, the border security particularly, I would expect that the command and control system along border territories ought to have been much more conscious, and alert than possibly those arguably say in Mukono, except that in Mukono you possibly expect that if it was maybe internal strategic domestic terror. But in terms of penetration from likely terror, because right now you know that anywhere within security installations, there will be likely targets, But particularly those from the borders, that, well, these guys are either likely to come through the borders of Congo, when this is the borders of Sudan. So Congo and Sudan, you would be able to be slightly much more heightened than, for argument's sake, maybe the border of Malaba.
Maybe Comrade Awich will help us, but this question is to you. How do you secure a porous border like one of Uganda when you're fighting an asymmetrical warfare?
You're asking me?
Yes.
Yeah, that's what I've just explained to you. Absolute common sense. You use intelligence-led operation. The way Museveni is, he has spies about his power and security, so much that his COVID thing just gets him by really luck. Number one. Number two, Museveni's spy network is common knowledge that is so much that even in Ucheno's place, it will go, including in Ucheno's bathroom. There's some kind of Museveni's intelligence.
All right.
So really, that does not, So when it comes to national security, and this guy spent huge amount of our money, and this guy has spent, the security budget has dominated our national budget and contributes to a huge part of the 18 trillion that we are paying, servicing as part of debt. That we should be able to see it either in terms of physical infrastructure and development project indices, but in terms of peace.
Fair enough.
And yeah.
Major Awich, we also have learned that.
But if you don't mind, just a quick. But I must recognize that terror is a difficult thing.
Yes, yes.
So we recognize that, you know.
That's
but
what
notwithstanding that,
that's
yeah.
what I
But
wanted to hear from
yeah.
you. Yeah, fair enough. You know, 5 days to the attack on Rubihira Secondary School, the U.S. Embassy at Kampala had warned its citizens that there is an imminent terror attack. Is there a lapse in intelligence? Do we have collaboration? Are we speaking to our diplomatic friends? Because surely they must have had some information that led them to such kind of message to their citizens.
Well, first I want to correct some
I know you would.
falsehood by the congressman.
Yes.
And he makes them again and again. Last week he made a similar one, especially when he ventures into the earnings of soldiers. Last week he made one false one that there was a university graduate who was a police
I contextualized
constable
that one.
and had taken 9 months. And I stated clearly that the recruitment of constable is for all levels. How does a graduate get himself there for 9 years? That was not true. So if we talk to our viewers, we must put facts clearly so that they are not misled.
Yes.
Now, in the same vein, he's saying yesterday he was having a meal and somebody was venturing into the earnings of the security personnel. So if you're not sure about the earnings, about the, say, the salary and the food allowance and the whatever allowance there too, so you are better not venturing, because the false would make a viewer think that that is the payment. So let's talk with facts. But your question is...
But did you just help me clarify? That's why this conversation, this debate for the citizens. You know, yeah.
No, I will not open their earnings here, but
There you
so
go.
you shouldn't also tell falsehood about it.
Public, is then this public information?
There you go.
Because I think that the welfare of
No, the
ADF
earnings of a person is not public information.
No, security pay. It's not about individuals, about security pay.
Yeah, but
These are our
about
monies.
public servants.
Yeah, public servants.
The overall budget is public, but individual pay.
No, of the names and ranks.
Not even, some people don't even show their pay to their wives.
Oh, no, that's fair enough.
Even
Not individuals, but we're
does
saying
your
ranks.
wife know your
But
salary?
we are saying, I think it's
How much
it's
does
fair
a
point.
corporal attached to Museveni's office, who's maybe recruited by his son, called SFG or whatever the case? How much do they earn? That's all.
Yeah. I think it's a fair point, Major Awich.
I don't think so. But let me answer the other question.
Public servants
I want to answer the question
earnings of public servants must be
I want to answer the question on what you ask about the diplomatic relationship. What I know is that we have a fair pact or an MOU in as far as fighting terrorism is concerned. And we share information with our allies. And therefore, ideally, whatever they intercept, they should communicate to us. Or whatever we intercept, we communicate to them. There's an institutional framework for the intelligence organization or the security agencies with our friends, the allies, the Americans, or other agents. So, I have not heard the text of the one you are citing, the text of the one they released. Some people say they warned on Western Uganda. Some people say they warn people, their citizens nationally. But be as it is, we are ideally supposed to cooperate. So I don't know the facts in this particular case, to what extent we cooperated or to what extent we didn't, whether this forms parts of the lapses that we are talking about, that form parts of the lapses. But ideally, we have an institutional framework in as far as combating terrorism is concerned. And I think there's funding to that extent. So, I don't know in this case, and that's why I was saying the text that you're quoting, I didn't have access to it. Of course, if I now indulge in it, it will be like debating a rumor. But I know always they do. They always do as and when they feel, or as and when they detect. So if in this case that I don't have a text of their warning, whether national or Western Uganda only, then we should now be conversing on, do we still have this MOU? Was it breached? Have we divorced ourselves from the MOU? Are our partners still fighting terrorism with us? And if they're doing it, do our state agencies take heed? Is it discretional? Are they bound to? Do they follow up? So those are the lapses which I think even in the theater, in the security room, are being discussed.
Yeah, because you know, we in the bigger context, we know that in the immediate past, the relationship between Kampala and Washington has been a one that is rather constrained.
Especially on terrorism fighting.
Yeah,
we could differ in the areas of democracy, or not democracy, but how to operationalize democracy. Okay? For example, they would have their views about term limit. Okay? But on fighting terrorism.
About the anti-homosexuality.
Yes, they could have their views about the anti-homosexuality.
And their views could constrain your ability to cooperate on
security matters. Like, it looks like it doesn't, because recently
it looks like it does because from the letter by the American embassy,
did they say they are touching security?
No, they clearly indicated there was an imminent. They said there was an imminent attack. And therefore, they want their citizens not to come into the country, for those who are in the country to be vigilant.
And I think that point is sort of getting lost.
Yeah.
My understanding is Harry is asking that the Americans warned, and there are reports that some senior people in NRA dismissed this, in fact, made fun of it. Why is it the case that officially Americans, who are basically your partners and you've been doing lots of biddings for them, why is it that you disregarded the security warning?
I think I explained that, didn't I? You want me to say?
No, I think that's a very specific thing. Why was it disregarded?
I explained to the effect that for the past we have been having institutional framework on combating terrorism.
Information sharing.
I said in combating terrorism, to the extent that I said there was even funding, not only information sharing, but funding. So, I'm not yet sure lately if that pact or MOU still stands.
Fair enough.
And if the MOU stands, did they communicate, apart from communicating to their citizens, was this information also communicated in that institutional framework of combating terrorism? If it was communicated through that institution of combating terrorism, why didn't our consumers not use it? And that's why I said it should be now a matter on the table in the theater room as to what is the validity of this institution to combat terrorism, and why should there be lapses? Are we still with our partners? But I was saying that when a congressman came in to say that we could have different views with the Americans, but not on security, because security is for all of us. For example, I have been recently touring Western capitals and talking to ministers of foreign affairs, the speakers of parliament, the foreign committees of parliament. I was in Germany, I was in Denmark, and I was in UK. I met your people in the House of Commons and the House of Lords. Their view, for example, a member of parliament can tell you, I am homosexual and I'm a member of parliament. But he makes a disclaimer and tells you, we could have various views on this. He makes a disclaimer. But such disclaimers are not made on security matters. Security is for all of us.
All right. Mr. Otieno, part of the unanswered question or some of the mixed messages coming through from government, which seems to be inharmonious, is that while addressing the public, the Minister of Education attributed, or rather she insinuated, that the attack could be attributed to the conflict between ownership of the school And yet the president, when he came in, he told us it was ADF. And then the police, through their Twitter account, also gave a different angle of the conflict. What does this tell us about the security analysis or the state of our security and our ability to really combat terrorism?
It's extremely worrying. And that's why I'll repeat what I've said in recent times many times, that this regime is tired, Mr. Museveni is tired, NRA is tired, and the big card NRA has played for a very long time is this a baseless claim that they brought security and they're the masters of security. Security as a ticket, as a card, is no longer an NRA card. That bounces back to UPC. You know, so that is now advantage UPC, holding all factors constant. To the extent that when incidents like this happen, and again, we'll try and help NRA guys how to manage these things, backed by an eminent lawyer here. Once really a major incident like this has happened, the first non-Kaihura response should not be, there goes ADF, there goes UPC, and their guys, of course we have found guys, there goes Noop and their people, I'm not a Noop spokesperson, there, you know, an incident happens, the foremost spokesperson of major incidents will usually be the police when it's a military incident, you know, and they will say, this is an incident that has happened, suspects ABCD, victims ABCD, casualties ABCD. So NRA, I'm giving you guys free advice, you know, and details to come. So you begin to do piecemeal. In fact, usually lead police, particularly spokespersons coming out, will tell the media, we will not be drawn to whether or not it's ADF or whoever. It is too early. By the time you come up with this, sometimes they can say, this has a hallmark of this. You know they've got evidence beyond reasonable doubt that is almost certainly that. That is how nations work. That's how UPC used to. That is how we will do in future. And that is what NRA guys you can learn and then try and run with it to guarantee a better security for our people. Because in so doing, you're giving confidence to the nation. You are ensuring that the suspects, remember they're suspects, you know, if apprehended, you know, they've got their space, you know, and they're legally protected, and they're not whatever they are until they are, and you know that's your game. That's your game. So that's what needed to have been done. They did not. So very quickly we're told it's ADF. And then as you rightly say, Museveni says so. It was actually shocking that Mrs. Museveni becomes actually the person to be delegated to go to Western Uganda.
She delegated the assistant.
Almost. She did. Yeah, so Mr. Museveni delegates his wife, you know, in a major security situation, and his wife powerfully delegates somebody else. So that is the Ugandan situation. And it's an international security crisis in which, as I said, we've had major deaths in Somalia. This has actually happened as a big shock in Congo. Congo, where Mr. Museveni still has major questions to answer to us. Why we've got our boys and girls in Congo. Why more recently we are building roads. Why more recently there's some of those awards there. Why the very same Congo where these people have come, where he told us that he already killed ADF. And by the way, in that Congo, which is causing us major burdens, where, you know, NRS and Museveni sent his boys down there. They went and caused havoc worth the billions, and right now we are paying back. And by then, Mr. Museveni, the people who looted in Congo, because this is important, the people who looted in Congo, most of them are alive and enjoying much more stolen loot. And the Congo takes us to court. No, I'm putting context. Congo takes us to court. And now we ordinary citizens. We ordinary citizens are paying for it. No. I'm contextualizing it. Yes. No, because it could be the case, Comrade Awich, that these so-called ADF, and even if they're ADF, they may be backed by Congolese with grievances against Uganda.
Wait.
And that's really why I was. We don't.
We don't know the motivation.
We don't know, but allow me to make the point, because you asked me a question. It's an important question.
Yeah.
We don't know the motivation, but I'm actually broadening it for you. So then for Mr. Museveni to send his wife, and his wife to then go ahead and say, oh, it might be a dispute over school ownership. I know there are mafias in NRA, but I think this is a bit of a stretch. Before we came on air, we're having a conversation about the looks of some of the suspects. I think it would be very interesting, Mrs. Museveni, that people in dispute could go ahead and train and organize. And I don't know the facts. I'm waiting for the truth. Organize and train people to go ahead and meet such kind of crude violence in the name of basically working because they're going to be paid up by somebody else. In a dispute for one or two people, gun persons versus the others, neither here nor there. But the manner in which those guys did it, I just don't understand it. So I'm afraid that is a bungled one.
And you would have normally expected the Minister of Defense,
and all Minister of Defense and all Minister of Internal Affairs. And in the unlikely event that there is a Minister of Education to go, Minister of Education goes behind the Minister of Defense. If anything,
exactly.
But anyway, there you go.
Major Awich, do you get a feeling that there is some discordance within the security organs? Like you've explained, we appreciate there's an elaborate security structure. The institutionalization is proper. But is it fair if one say that there seems to be more of competition amongst security organs than coordination and cooperation to provide national security?
No, I don't think so. Because if you remember, there was a time where there was evident conflict among security organizations. Evident in that it would come to the public domain. For example, it would appear in social media or even in the print media or TV that CMI was opposed to ISO, or ISO was opposed to Kayura. There would even be arrest by this organization and released by the other one. Even information would come in a conflicting way.
Yes.
But you can see that for a long time that has not occurred. And please, let me tell you, no news is good news. In America, they believe that media can make you a dog or a king. Because no news is good news, because bad news travel faster. So when there is no news about the interrelationship of security organs, it means there is nothing wrong. If there was something wrong, it would be evident. And as I told you, it was evident at one time where one organization arrests, another one releases. Another one is talking this, another one is talking that. You'd hear like Kayura versus the ISO guy who left, who was called no, the one who lives in the island in the water. No, this Kaka. You'd hear that.
There are very many,
You hear Kaka, but these were information in the public domain. It was in the print media, on the TV, on the social media. But we don't hear that. This shows to you that there is no conflict among security organs.
All right.
If it was there, it would have come. As I told you, no news is good news. If there is bad news, it comes out. So even you and me in our daily life, when you don't hear any news about you, smile, because no news is as good as good news. So there is no conflict whatsoever. But I only insist that these lapses may be overemphasized by our colleagues. But remember the congressman who is talking, who has been in government for 2 times. The security that the ordinary people used to talk about is not even the security where you're saying ADF has attacked. Most of the security complaints were state-inspired insecurity. They were state-inspired in that people know whichever soldier has looted who. Soldiers used to loot and even carry uprooted iron sheets on the bus. You see that these iron sheets are not from the shops. They are from somebody's roof. People would know how police has. So the insecurity that we used to experience with him.
Are you saying that state-sponsored insecurity has been totally eliminated from Uganda?
Completely. What we are now talking about is lapses. What we are now talking about is sleeping on the job. What we are now talking about is, but we are not talking of saying a section or a platoon of soldiers went and looted in Mukono, or a section of a platoon of soldiers went and looted in Gulu. That is out of the way. So when you are to, and this is what the ordinary people are saying, actually, the security brought. The ordinary people are not talking of this when they said we sleep.
But,
okay, they are not talking of sleep vis-a-vis being attacked from outside. Actually, they're talking of sleeping because the state agencies, the ordinary people have seen over time that when a soldier does this to you, is put on a firing squad and killed.
But Mr. Awich, looks like the ordinary people in Kasese, you know, by their behavior, or at least what we are hearing, have lost confidence in the UPDF. Why do I say so? You know, we are told that the rebels could have been in the area 2 days prior to the incident and actually conducted the incident for 2 hours. You know, where you have confidence of the public, maybe you could have received intelligence information about rare characters within the area. So does this mean that...
I could agree with you to some extent in that it is very difficult to build an image, but very easy to lose it. Even yourself, with the reputation you have done, it is easy to lose it. So in natural phenomena, sociological or otherwise, it is not easy. It is very difficult to build. So the confidence that we have built with the public over time, it is hard earned. But a single incident can bring it back. But I also urge the population to take it a case by case, that this is a small incident. It shouldn't ruin the confidence built over a long period of time. But it's easy to lose it. And we are alive to that effect.
All right. Thank you very much, gentlemen. To our viewers, we are discussing the state of security in Uganda, and we are going to take a very short commercial break. When we return, we shall explore the implications of what happened in Kasese, generally for the regional security, but also we'll go into a related incident, which is the attack on the UPDF base in Somalia. And we will conclude the show with a take on the African peace mission on the Russia-Ukraine war. Stay with us.
The Citizens Chatroom happens every Friday at 2 p.m. on Civic Space TV Online on Facebook and YouTube. We invite you to be part of this conversation. Civic Space TV, freedom always.
Welcome back to the show. Thank you for staying with us. You're watching Citizens Chat Show here at Civic Space TV, and we are discussing the state of national security in the wake of the terror events that have crippled the nation for the last couple of months. In the next segment, we shall focus on the terror on the UPDF base in Somalia, and then we shall also explore the role of the African leaders in the Russia-Ukraine war. To answer these questions and share the insights, eminent leaders, distinguished leaders, really very fine gentlemen, Major Awich Pollar, who is the Director of External Services at the National Resistance Movement, and Mr. Otieno Joseph, who is a UPC ideologue and a media personality. Thank you very much. Gentlemen, let's shift gears to Somalia because it has a serious national security implication. You know, the other months we lost our officers, about 54 of them. May their souls rest in eternal peace. But the question I think that many Ugandans are asking is the cost of this war really, really worth it? Mr. Otieno, has the Somalian affair become too costly for Ugandans? We've been in Somalia for the sake of our viewers since 2007 under AMISOM, and now I think the mission has been changed to ATMIS.
The same thing.
Yeah. Basically the same thing, same soldiers, same guns, same boots, same mission. Has it become too costly for us as a nation?
It was costly from day one. We ought not to have been there. We should never have been there. A UPC administration would withdraw our boys and girls immediately. But that said, I just want to very quickly clarify a small point before we went to break. Comrade Awich was at pains to justify the bangles in NRA by invoking an old propaganda on UNLA particularly about some of their conducts. It is true that some of the guys in UNLA would behave like some of the guys do behave in NRA. But NRA is a personal army of Mr. Museveni, and he has controlled it like his baby for a very long time. He boasts is from another thing that started in 1967, even before he went to university. So it's neither here nor there. So it's the more reason why actually we should have nothing else but saints in the security services. But UNLA was actually a national army, and it was not a UPC army. Kikosi Mahalum, the biggest component granted of UNLA, was a UPC-led army that amalgamated with everyone else, including FRONASA actually in UNLA. So every time we talk about UNLA, we shouldn't forget that UNLA includes and included FRONASA guys, including Mr. Museveni, the Tinyifunzas, and many other people.
All right.
So that's an important clarification to make. But since we're discussing security, we need to put these things in context. Because my hope is that these conversations, as we resolve, it helps us, particularly the younger viewers and the younger citizens of this country, to look at lessons of the past, lessons of today, as we try to build consensus around how best we're able to move this country forward, and particularly to do so without necessarily seeking rigor beyond intellectual conversations and debates, and in a manner in which we don't waste resources, even if it's material resources, but definitely in a manner in which we do not waste resources, meaning human life, human lives. The UNLA that UPC inherited in 1980, December, was a UNLA that had been the national army from Dar es Salaam, rather from Moshi, up to December 1980. So it was an amalgam of forces, an amalgam of different kind of interests. So we inherited as a party, as a governing party, that army. And we fought to struggle so hard to put it together and to instill a sense of discipline. That's again a topic for another reason day, and maybe we should actually have invite us to a discussion to discuss armies and characters and their histories, which would be very interesting, and I think would be very useful, particularly to the young citizens of this country. And UNLA guys should not be offended when we are discussing certain things which are possibly critical in certain ways, and definitely NRA must not see that as something about themselves, but rather lessons for our young people, as I said. Now, looting. There was never a time under the UPC2 administration when UNLA was in charge that I would know that there's a village in which was ransacked and raided, except where UNLA was engaging NRA in Luwero. Yeah?
Go to West Nile.
No.
All the iron seats were looted.
You're rushing in
Gentlemen,
now.
I would like us to focus on Somalia.
It is security, and we shall contextualize with Somalia. It is some of these baseless foundations that built Museveni, and Museveni now uses those ones to blackmail Ugandans. So that was not the case. Number two, yes, granted, West Nile incidents didn't happen, and interestingly, in West Nile incidents that happened, there is evidence that actually the unit of UNLA that was predominantly involved, including personalities that were involved in UNLA. Some of them actually are drawn towards units of UNLA that are either from NASA leaning or others, but that's a slightly different topic. But finally, what was true about looting that happened that I saw was on July 27th and 28th, 1985. That was after the coup against UPC. Now that coup involved NRA DP, and UNLA. So basically it was for us everything else. And amidst that, those confusion in Kampala between July 1986 until indeed when NRA came to power.
Yes.
So Kampala was in a state of mess and state of war, and the several other armies. So usually people tend to draw that and relate it to UPC. No, UPC was on the run, So that's to put it down there. Now back to Somalia. As I said before, we were opposed to NRA going to Somalia. Museveni sent NRA to Somalia to serve his interest, to serve his Anglo-American interest, and it was not anything to do with peacekeeping. It was simply because it was easier for Ugandan boys and girls to die in Somalia instead of the Americans, whom the Americans feared to put on the ground, particularly after America had had a bloody nose bitten by Somalis in the early 90s. And it was purely that. That said, what did they do there thus far? If they made a contribution, which by and large they did, fine. I think it is no longer in our strategic national interest to have NRA in Somalia when we cannot secure merely our Congolese border. So these guys need to come back urgently. We need to reorganize these guys. We need to retrain them. We need to re-equip them. And beyond that, we need to make sure, I want to repeat, that we need to make sure that we cater for their welfare, remunerate them well, remunerate their families well, reorientate their minds to a national army rather than an army protecting Mr. Museveni, and above all, ensure these guys have got access to decent accommodation. Robongi Barracks in Tororo is unacceptable, worse than a place for an ordinary kraal. It is worse than a kraal of some of these ministers who were stealing iron sheets to wrap up for their animals. Go to any average army barracks in this country, you will see the same thing. Go to any average police barracks, whether it's Naguru, anywhere else, you will see how the state in which our security services actually live. These guys deserve decent housing. And most importantly, I know when we talk about security services, people see these army guys who are followed by 20 people, one individual blocking banks and blocking roads. No, I'm talking about the average ordinary security services. Senior military guys in this country, most of them are living lives which are too privileged to be justifiable, but that's a slightly different case. But that's the making of Mr. Museveni, because he's now beholden to these people. Somalia, we need to urgently withdraw our boys and girls from there and make sure that they contribute to our national defense. If we cannot protect our borders in Somalia, if we cannot protect our security police units, if we cannot protect ordinary bloggers in Kampala, if we can't even have a guarantee that a minister's guide is conscious and responsible, patriotic enough to do their rightful job, and they've got grievances, what exactly are we doing extremely at the end of Horn of Africa, which does not border the Republic of Uganda? We need to do these things like yesterday.
Major Awich, you've had Mr. Tieno, and I would like to ask you, what are some of the national benefits that accrues to Uganda or the Ugandan people because of our presence in Somalia?
First of all, let me also make a follow-up comment on what Mr. Tieno has said. My question I had raised was that the security that our people are enjoying, or the insecurity that they don't have now, is mainly state-inspired. I may wish to state here that, do you know that at any one point in Uganda, Swahili language was actually despised, feared, or even hated? Why? Because for a long time, the state apparatus was communicating to Uganda in that language, and it was a language of insecurity. Whether somebody is knocking at your door, or at a roadblock is harassing you, or is beating you anyway. So this is why even that language of communication was despised or hated. But now with the East African community, the language is coming back as a mode of communication. But that to show you that there was state-inspired insecurity with a specific communication method. This is undisputable. And that is the insecurity that the people said we sleep. Because whoever would knock at your door speaking Swahili, it would be coming to harass you. So
yeah, but UPC is no longer here. We've had now 40 years of NRM.
Yes,
and we are assessing
and that's why we are saying the
decision of
lapses.
NRM.
That's why we are saying the lapses that occur, like this attack, cannot really, it should be taken as lapses as such. Vis-a-vis, if, for example, it was a state-inspired insecurity. The lapses of attack in Kasese should be seen as such, not as state-inspired. Now, I come back to Somalia. Now, I will also make an overarching statement Somalia vis-a-vis, but before that, I have always said about facts. Again, Mr. Thieno makes one wrong fact, which the viewers may be misled. He says, Tinyefonza was in Front NASA. Tinyefonza was not.
No, I said only.
He was not. Tinyefonza was not a soldier until a freedom fighter in NRA. Tinyefonza, on the contrary, was a police officer.
Police officer, yeah, that's right.
Was a police officer.
Police officer.
So we should mean what we say and say what we mean.
When did he join the army?
He joined the army in 1981. That is the Bush army.
From the police.
So he had never been a soldier. In fact, it tells you I'm a soldier by revolution, not a professional soldier. So I want our viewers to get facts clear. So he was not in Front NASA, he was not in UNLA, he just joined NRA to become a soldier.
Coming from the police at the time,
okay.
Yes.
So we should put facts on. Now, I'm going to join this comment between for Somalia and Kasese, because what do these adversaries want to invoke in us? Exactly what you are talking is what they want to invoke. Even Kasese, because I was in Urban TV and somebody was saying, let us talk to them. So meaning, I don't kill soldiers in a barracks, I don't lay ambush to kill soldiers, I don't fight them in the front, I go and kill children, and then you join in and say, let's talk. If they were attacking the barracks, if they were attacking in the front, or laying an ambush to soldiers, and killing them, it would be understandable. But if immediately you start to allow voices coming, because they have killed children, let us negotiate, then you are actually talking the language they deserve in their objective. Same thing with Somali. If you start now saying, we are wasting resources, we are there to fight other people's war, let us withdraw, that is their language. But the point is, in the case of Somali, is that UPDF is there for the purpose of Pan-Africanism. The ruling party that we have has 4 core principles. One core principle is Pan-Africanism. It is not enough for us to sleep in Uganda and have other Africans in Mozambique, in wherever, sleeping. At one time, we were also suffering. The Tanzanians came. Otherwise, the Tanzanians would also say, that is Uganda with their mean. We have no business. Why do we put our resources? Tanzania put massive resources to our disposal to make sure we sleep. We put massive disposal in South Africa, resources in South Africa, to bring what it is in South Africa. So if you don't see our involvement in Somalia in that context, then you should better think again.
In the case of Tanzania, one can argue that, is a strategic ally, at the time and even now, there is
strategic ally to who?
There is a heavy trade relationship between Uganda and
Tanzania was our neighbor.
Yes,
Tanzania was our neighbor.
Yes.
Tanzania was threatened by Amin.
Yes.
Granted, could we argue that Tanzania had Obote and motivation from Obote and Museveni to come in.
Boundaries.
But definitely Tanzania was not serving other interests.
But
Uganda at the moment under Museveni, my argument actually is not about Ugandans defending and protecting Somalia. The South Africa my brothers talk about is it was our UPC initiative way back in the early 60s.
Why did you have the initiative? If we are not having
No.
Why did you?
No, what I'm trying to say.
Why did you?
Actually, my
Shouldn't
problem.
have done it.
No, my problem with Somalia is that our original going to Somalia was not to serve a Pan-African agenda. Our original going to Somalia was to put African men on behalf of Anglo-America.
That is according
But
to
also-
Setusieno.
It is actually
That is
officially,
according to
it
Setusieno.
continues
That
until
is not
today.
according
It
to
has
also
been wrapped up.
speaking-
And the conversation we
speaking-
want
But
to
have I
have.
finished?
Speaking
I
as,
think I've not finished.
No, I just would like to push a little bit on the question of our strategic interest in Somalia. Because when you speak of Tanzania, it's easier to relate. There's trade. So there is a direct economic benefit. But in the case of Somalia, I don't see any relationship. If it were Kenya there, I would understand. But what's our strategic interest there?
You see, if you accept
Yeah.
that other people like Tanzania should put in their resources because it is border, I'm sure the same people will not extend that argument to South Sudan. And they have been against us helping South Sudan. In other words, you accept Tanzania to help us from the south, and you don't expect Uganda to help in the north. That is the same goalpost changing of argument that you even say, not Somali. It is a case-by-case situation. It must not be only on border accessibility. If it was purely on border accessibility, why are others even against us helping South Sudan that we say a common border? They have been against it. So the point here is that for us in NRM, 4 key principles, one of them is Pan-Africanism. We do not believe that Ugandan sleeping is enough. It doesn't care whether others are dying. It's none of our business. Even for the
Even
sake
at a
of
very
trade,
high cost.
we can't even have trade. And indeed, we have trade with Somalia. Trade does not only need border. We trade with Europe. We trade with America. Do we have any border with them? So the benefits are good for Uganda. The benefits are good for Somalis. And that is why it is our core principle. And it is not the first country that we have moved to help. It is not the first. We have done it in South Africa. Now they have peace. Let me tell you, there was a time when South African member states, what they call then frontline states, Angola, Mozambique, Zambia, Zimbabwe, they had been threatened by South African white regime. Should you have freedom fighters in your country, we shall bomb you. Indeed, they bombed like the Serena of Zambia in Lusaka. Why? Because ANC was having a conference. They flew and bombed it. There was only President Museveni who stood up and said, bring them here. When they were bringing them here, South Africa warned that we shall bomb you. Bomb State House and Entebbe. Museveni said, come. In cabinet meeting, Adoro Nekyon and Semogerere, who were ministers, argued in cabinet and chased South Africans. Kategaya and Kiruna Kivijinja helped Museveni, and we resolved to have Africa. We took them to Kaweta, we trained them. Even the young Kadogos were taken with me together in Intare school and other schools they studied. So this Pan-African spirit has been there. We endured to keep the South Africans, train them in tens of thousands, arm them, took them back. What is so special with Somalia? What is so special with South Sudan or Congo or any other country? For us, we believe in Pan-Africanism. We have stood it. It is costly,
Congo,
but it is
Sudan,
worth
South
it.
Sudan, we are looking at the market and...
I'm saying this is a case-by-case situation, but it is, you know very well that you don't only trade when you have a common border. You can trade with other countries even if you don't have common
What do we
border.
trade with Somalia?
Even potatoes, even what? Anything, even food. We are a food basket.
Yes.
Would you be happy if you grow your maize and you don't have market? Would you be happy if Ugandans grow beans and there's no market? Would you be happy when Uganda grow milk and they have milk and there's no market? Is it true that you only trade with a country with common borders? But even if it is economic interest, without economic interest, we have sacrificed so much. What have we got from South Africa now? We trade with South Africa, yes. But is it worth the contribution? Was it worth the sacrifice when South Africa had threatened to bomb State House in Entebbe? They threatened to bomb State House. And it was a debate in cabinet. Museveni held his ground and said we cannot leave our brothers. All these people were brought from Angola, we are brought from Zambia, we kept them in Kawaweta, here in Nakasongola. That is to demonstrate to you the strength of Pan-Africanism and how costly it is.
My final question to you on Somalia. You know, we've been there for more than 15 years now. What's the plan to get out? Shouldn't we by this time have built the state capacity of Somalia to defend its own territory and return the security of the people of Somalia to the Somalis themselves?
I think the plan is in there, built in a document by African Union. The African Union have a roadmap. The roadmap trickle downs to implementers. I think part of the implementation is training, and we have been training, and other countries I think have been training. Recently, we had a meeting in Munyonyo of heads of states of troops contributing.
Yes.
The troops contributing head of states reviewed the situation, and it is being worked on. So, the way forward, the roadmap is well explained in a document by African Union, which is discussed by troop contributing countries, which I said they are the conference in Munyonyo, heads of states. And I think the way forward therein is there, including training and capacity building for the independent sovereign army to do it. So that is the roadmap there.
All right. Mr. Otieno, let us shift gears to the global...
You don't want to respond briefly? 1 minute, please.
Why would you like to respond?
No, I have to clarify.
I thought that Major Awich has been thorough and honest in his...
No, not at all.
To the viewers. So what do you want to contradict?
I have unfortunately to disappoint
All right, in 1 minute, then we shift gears.
The point is this.
Yeah.
The original presence of NRA into Somalia, and Museveni cannot deny this, was to serve Anglo-American interests.
According to St.
It was not.
According to St.
Who finances the Somali war?
You go, Anglo-America did it, and of course now, no, point is, the Somali thing, wherever we are at the moment, these things change name. The African Union kind of stuff, of course, how much can we say on air, how much can we say? This is a fact, and as I say, let Mr. Museveni go ahead and challenge that. Maybe some of this is actually over and above community, which is a position at the moment, and we don't want to get too much into this. So that's clear. Ugandans need to get it. And by the way, I say it as somebody who has been challenging this position on behalf of Uganda People's Congress and Ugandans since 2007. So it's a matter of fact out down there, just to repeat it. So I know what we're talking about. Number two, the question of Pan-Africanism is no contradiction. The Pan-Africanist Party of Uganda is Uganda People's Congress, not NRA. Pan-Africanists don't invade like NRA invaded Rwanda and occupied. Pan-Africans don't invade and occupy like NRA invaded and occupied Congo with the Kabila's times. The Pan-Africanists who did South Africa first, Ugandans need to know, are all Ugandans. UPC paid the price with the Idi Amin. So the South African thing was basically our initiative way back from 1961. So there's no contradiction about that. So when we are doing it and there is something happening in Zambia, something is happening in Zimbabwe and it concerns all of us, we should engage. If anything, as I said, UPC lost a government as a result of South Africa. In fact, the British state crossed the line. It's UPC, meaning Obote, who was the spokesperson of the frontline state leaders headed by Mulungushi Club of the three. So there's no contradiction about it, so we just needed to make sure that we clarify that.
All right.
It is simply that NRA is serving a different interest and it's not an African interest.
All right. Fair enough. We leave the judgments to our viewers, but now I'd like us to change gears to the global war. I know the Russia-Ukraine war has had global implications. Last week we had the African leaders, a team of 7 African leaders, visit Zelensky in Kyiv, Ukraine, and later also meet with President Putin in Moscow. I don't know. I would like to hear from you, gentlemen, what you think that, what your take is on the African mission, peace mission to Ukraine. What do you make of it?
It was a show, merely it was a show. African leaders going to Ukraine, they knew, and Russia knew that there's not much they could do. But it was a symbolic and it's important. Actually, them coming together to begin to say, let's have the speakers one voice, is credit to them. But the fact that they're going there and we can't solve Somalia, Awich is saying that we cannot talk to these Somali terrorists, all, as if the NRA guys did not behave the same way in Luwero.
In Somalia, there are no entities to negotiate with.
Well, of course they are there. They are there, and the same ADF guys. Some of them are in Luzira. All sorts of claims and allegations are made. We don't want to go into that. Okay. So some of these things are neither here nor there. And then back on a serious note, genuinely, if I was a big African leader like Thabo Mbeki and Cyril Ramaphosa today, I'd be saying that we need to change tact. We need to begin talking to our colleagues in the opposition. We need to be able to mitigate conflicts. We need to be able to make sure that Malema, who taunts Ramaphosa in parliament, is an example to a noob guy in Kampala with Mr. Museveni, that they're able to have tea. All these will be minimizing many of this, and maybe the more we're doing that, the more maybe people in Kasese and the question of Kasese would be resolved. Many of that maybe we're able to push our energies to Congo and make sure that, well, we're between Kinshasa and Kampala and what's happening to our people's down their welfare and things like that. But that said, it was clearly the case that these guys were trying to taunt Anglo-America, in the name of their non-aligned thing, following the Ukraine-Russia vote and the UN, for which General Assembly, for which the Africans were right to take the position that they did. That Anglo-America went to Iraq, bombed them and destroyed the infrastructure and ate their oil. And how dare they say that, well, you need to take a different position on Russia. Quite clearly, this is an ideological war. It's the case that NATO has moved itself to the compound, almost the near compound of Russia, and they didn't expect Russia to respond. So for that, I have clear sympathies to Russia. At the same time, I have very serious sympathy with the people of Ukraine, who are now a battleground for this war, just like Africa was a battleground for the Cold War. If it had been Russia doing whatever NATO is doing, at the borders of NATO and threatening NATO, and in this case, you remember the Cuban crisis when guys were still young, and when nearly went missile thing, simply because the Soviet Union then was deploying, in way back in Cuba. So these things are neither here nor there. This is a global geopolitics. Linked to that is the fact that, of course, BRICS has come up, and nations are threatening and coming to join BRICS more. Saudi Arabia is, Iran is, and many other major nations are coming, and the powers of American dollar is being threatened. So all these are part of the disputes in there. But very quickly, I think that my disappointment with that, Comrade Awich, is that I offer to be the speechwriter for these guys next time. I watched with interest very articulate Mr. Ramaphosa. He can be articulate. He's a seasoned peacemaker. He's an elder statesman who pushed me at the early time of the anti-apartheid movements. I nearly cried when he was not made the deputy to Mandela, and Mbeki came up. Now, looking with hindsight, I realized that possibly they were right to have Mbeki, and of course, Ramaphosa has disappointed me in many other ways. But of course, it's having president as a colleague of mine in the ANC, because that's our sister party. Now, in them to say we've come to talk peace because we want you to stop your war. We don't care how many of your people are dying, but we want you to stop this war because it's affecting us in terms of cereals. I think that was very unfortunate. In the statement, there was nothing to say that, look, we are interested mainly in global peace. We are concerned about the atrocities. We are concerned about possibilities of nuclear war. We are concerned about the destructions taking place in Ukraine and obviously Russia, but particularly mainly in Ukraine, which is basically a theater of war. We are concerned that we don't want to see what happened in Iraq happening again here. We understand both sides have concerns. What is it? How can we go ahead and deal with the underlying things? That is what I would have expected from them. The fact that they didn't do that, as I said, makes me wonder. Really, who are the speech makers? I know for those for Mr. Museveni, the many of these heckler boys in Kampala and girls who go ahead and do these things. And so it's not surprising that the total statement. But I expected something slightly better. That they missed,
But-
by presenting themselves that we came to talk that end the war because of our interests rather than global peace.
Does that reflect the psychological state of being of the African leaders, when they meet maybe most of these Western guys, Putin, they meet, Zelensky, do they come with an inferiority, point of an inferiority kind of self,
That's very interesting.
self-view? Because, you're right, I agree with you. A man said that the reason we are here is we are affected. The grains that are no longer coming to Africa, and Africa, we are told, is a food basket.
So we need to end our strategic battles because your people are there. No wonder they said, you guys go ahead and sort out your mess. It's very unfortunate. No, you can actually see from the statement. And yet, Ramaphosa is someone who's globally respected. And he could easily have gone there boldly. Guys who've helped negotiate and participate in the conflict resolution in South Africa, leading to COSATU and then the elections in CODESA rather, and the elections in South Africa. Anybody who's been involved in Middle East peace processes, meaning Arab-Israeli conflict, and anybody who's involved in particularly the Northern Ireland peace processes. Many of these guys would normally be big names. And so it's not surprising that it is. So as a part of a delegation, it was fine. For me, even if it was the case that they're trying to poke these guys, they still needed to have done it better.
Statement.
But maybe at the back of it, as you rightly say, is the panic of inferiority. I don't know. But at this stage, I expect them to do better. And moreover, Ramaphosa, as head of delegation with Putin, these guys have got rapport. Putin has been on the continent. Putin is, over the years, and a friend of the region. In fact, along the anti-apartheid struggles and some of the things that my comrade was talking about here, his includes presence in the frontline battle areas, including TZ. So, and then the fact that actually Ramaphosa to put up his hands in the war, but he put it for them to simply say that we're going to back you guys on these particular issues, and yes, Putin is going to come to South Africa and we're not going to arrest him and things like that. He should have gone there with slightly much more confidence.
Yeah, exactly.
But of course, he knew that when he was in Kiev, he was in Kiev not talking to Zelensky, but he was in Kiev talking to the front boy of America, just like Mr. Museveni possibly would have been if he was there just on this occasion, just trying to wrap up African thing, because Mr. Museveni and Zelensky are not really particularly different when it comes to some of their interests vis-a-vis America.
Thank you so much. Major Awich, Uganda was represented by Ndugu Rugunda. Is he your Obi? Is an Obi?
He's my Obi.
He's your Obi.
He's a fine guy.
Yeah. I know you hold him in high regard. Yeah, he was, Uganda was represented by Ndugu Rugunda. There are theories that the president skillfully avoided being part of the delegation. What's your take on this whole peace mission to Ukraine by African leaders?
The peace mission was good. But in one of the rare occasions, I can agree with my congressman.
My pleasure.
It's a good thing.
Yeah, in one of the rare occasions, I will agree with what he has said. I think Ramaphosa, being in ANC, he could have been exposed to some literature, like dialectical materialism, historical materialism, and political economy. That literature makes you take things from a point of view of materialistic, and therefore lead you to your economic interest, which I think in this case he misjudged it and exaggerated it. The African position has been made clear even in UN, in many votings that has come up. Africans tend to think that we should stay clear out of this war, and not only stay clear of this war, but also help if we can mitigate it or bring them together. But I do not think the exaggeration of material interest should have been put in front like that.
Exactly.
In fact, the Ukraine president belittled them. He
Yes.
said, I'm told you have fertile land. Go and produce your grain. If it is your grain, our grain, that is.
And the President Putin also told them that Ukraine is not going to solve the world hunger.
Yes.
It's not what? Going to solve
the world
yes.
hunger.
So the Ukraine man told them, go and grow your grain, if that is it. So I think it was an exaggeration of material interest in the political objective, and it was a simplification, oversimplification of our packaging of an information. There too, it was unfortunate. So if that is the mental capacity of our leaders, then it is really unfortunate.
But can we put the responsibility entirely on Cyril Ramaphosa, given that this was an entourage of
we can't because
leaders,
we can't because
where Uganda should also be
we can't because even the detail of the discussion, I'm not privy to it. So they just give this highlight of the South African president. So we don't know thereafter if other members in the delegation raised more fundamental issues.
It is presumed.
But the statement was a collective.
It was a collective statement.
Under which doesn't disagree anyway.
Said
which is really unfortunate.
Because
on Uganda's representation,
10 elements.
on Uganda's representation, true President Museveni was not well. But also note that the person of Rugunda is holding a position of a presidential envoy. A presidential envoy is a person with the integrity, the posture, and the stature that can act on behalf of the president. And I think with this diplomatic etiquette, Rugunda fits that. But I think the Africans missed to steal a show in this case. This was a ball put for them to score in a penalty, and they failed to score by simplification of a packaging of their statement.
Yes.
You can't go and say you should leave fighting because you are not giving me, you are fighting stops me from getting rice. Grow your own rice.
Maybe that's where our mental capacities are at the moment.
But
is that the best of Africa, Mr. Otieno? What we saw represented in Moscow and Kyiv by the 7 African leaders, is that the best representation of the African minds?
I'm really disappointed. The oversimplification of packaging, the global matters. I am really disappointed.
I want actually to repeat, because I said we agree on this, that we can't emphasize it enough, since both of us actually agree on this. And we were not making point scoring on this. I am genuinely surprised that this is a statement, and I know I've got friends in ANC, that this is well, I've not been there for the last 5 years, so things may be possibly change. I am genuinely quite surprised that the crop of cadreship, which is actually very good, by the way.
By the way, how many leaders went? Uganda was represented by this. Who else apart from South African president?
There was Ghana, there was,
the president of Ghana?
No. President of Zambia.
Yes, Zambia, Comoros. Then there was South Africa, of course. Then there was...
Egypt didn't go. I think they're up to four or five leaders who were there.
No, there were actually 7.
No, in terms of leaders, substantive
presidents.
I think about 5.
I think they're about 5. 5 out of 7.
Yeah, but as I said, forget that. So the point I'm making is this: that these are 7 nations. So first of all, just merely South Africa, even if their own statements, there's no excuse that there was insufficient backup from Uganda. That statement
South
passed.
Africa is the leader of Africa, in many respects.
Yeah.
Yes.
And that is the statement they could make.
So that is one. Number 2, at protocol, and my brother here would be equally a mini expert on it. Would require, particularly that this is a statement involving a series of nation states. The exchange of drafts and statements go on. So by the time you actually have an agreed, including the final bit in which Ramaphosa is going to read, will have been agreed by 7 states. Now, where are their foreign affairs ministers? Where the whatever. No, clearly it's extraordinarily worrying that is the material that comes out from us. Meaning that, as I said, I want to repeat, even if this had been passed as a draft by the leaders, their technical staff, whom we pay hugely, Somebody from there, including from basically the intelligence, for the substance, should have said that, look, you guys, that's why my brother says a lost opportunity. This was quite clearly a lost opportunity for us to poke on these guys. That you guys, we are the peacemakers of the world. What are you guys doing here? We don't want any more lines kind of stuff.
Our evolving role on
Yes,
global
and
Yes,
capability.
precisely. Our capabilities in this, yes.
And this was coming on the heels of strong statements from leaders like Paul Kagame, the leader from William Ruto from Kenya, the leader from Ghana, Kufo. These guys who have been standing up and making strong statements in support of African identity and Africa being able to stand on its own.
When I first listened, I thought it was here's me Ochieno again.
Our time is fast.
Me Ochieno again.
We need to conclude
But as he concluded and came to me as a reality that this is the end of the news from the room, yes, I went sank. But anyway.
All right. I would like to give each one of you about 30 seconds to make your final message to our viewers, and we'll start with
Congress.
I know Awich is very desperately wanting to make sure that NRA has the last laugh. On this occasion, I would like to offer him that privilege and to conclude this way: that no, as I said, it's very unfortunate whatever happened in Kasese. I really hope we go to the roots of it. And number one, and then number two, that the NRA security ups their game so that we're able to deal with some of the quite clearly mitigatable situations that we've seen happening in the recent times in terms of security lapses in the country. We've not even talked about many of the unexplained and unconcluded investigations involving unfortunate losses of lives here. Beyond that, as I said, Somalia, yes, withdraw our boys and girls, whatever the case, and let's prepare and wait for another day. And finally, on this trip abroad, as I said, it was a lost and wasted opportunity by African leaders. But maybe with this kind of reviews, a next opportunity is going to arise. But finally, on that which is very important, that I hope the fact that they made these trips may possibly embolden them to a possibility that next time there is an eruption of a crisis on the continent, that there will be slightly much more of a collective voice, because that is what has been generally lacking on the continent. And collective loud rather than collective private calls to comrade president with whom we share some deals, some of them actually share relationships about some of the dollar or social things that we have no clue. But in whatever happens, this continent is possible. The best of it lies in the future. And you young guys are the future. And my beautiful camera lady is the best manifestation. Let's wake up. Let's see that on the basis of the statements coming from our leaders, there is a lot of work that needs to be done. But remember, you young guys need to make sure that you get engaged much more if the future is to be secured for all of us.
Thank you very much, Mr. Ochieno. Let's
my last words is that, one, the national security is guaranteed. There's capacity and will. And please, let us not, as a public or as a country, be provoked into speaking the enemy's words. Because the enemy wants to attack school children and wants you to sympathize and say negotiate. They would have achieved. Similarly, in other fronts. So let us refrain from making statements that make the enemy achieve their objective. Objective like withdraw, objective like negotiate. That is what they want. If they have bombed you into that, unfortunate. Two, the African missed an opportunity to showcase our peacemaking capability. If we don't have the well-paid people that it says, then we should have contracted a professor of strategic governance or something in the University of Cape Town or something to write what we are, to make, they do it, call it a product. This is the product. But what we did was an oversimplification of packaging, and it doesn't help us. We had the ball to score. It was put in front of the net to showcase our capacity. We missed it. So, Ugandans, security is guaranteed. Please, let's leave the men and boys, the boys and girls in the theater to do their work.
Thank you very much, gentlemen. It's always a pleasure to have you on this show. To our viewers, it is a very thank you to you for always joining us for the Citizen Chat Show. We've been discussing the state of security in Uganda. Thank you for staying with us. I've been your host, Harris. Please do follow us on Facebook, YouTube, and Twitter at Civic Space TV. Until next time, from us, we say bye-bye, and to the bereaved families in Kasese, the students, we do send our sincere condolences. Thank you.